Hi, St. Paul. It's Pastor Clark. I am recording this on Tuesday night, May 19th. St. Paul's Council just had a meeting last night, and so I wanted to share with you in this video kind of what our plan is, our new plan is going forward for returning to St. Paul. At least for the next several weeks, we will be worshiping online only and continuing with what we've been doing, which is the building essentially closed, except for the most basic business and yeah, online only. So so that's kind of sad news. I mean, I'm kind of heavy-hearted. I mean, even every new thing that is postponed or canceled is another loss, and yeah, it's a real bummer. I've been kind of sad and bummed about that since our meeting today. Although I think I really trust the plan and the leaders who have given it their okay and their seal of approval. So yeah, let's just take you right now to that plan, and I'll do my best to kind of walk it through and anticipate questions that you might have. All right, so here we go. So there you can see the web address for the plan. Return to St. Paul plan. It's the official one. You are going to receive a link to this in the e-news today and going forward. And you'll also receive a hard copy of it in the epistle, paper, and digital newsletter that comes out at the end of May for June. But I'll tell you that what is online will be the official version of the plan. St. Paul is blessed because Kristen Samuelson, who's St. Paul's administrative assistant and bookkeeper, she has a strong background in education and especially in risk planning for schools. And she said that with these risk plans, they're just always changing. There's always adapting. There's no way you can foresee every situation. And so we stopped printing paper copies of our risk plans, Kristen said, and just had it online because it changed so often. So, that's the first thing that I'd say. After the bit of background that this comes from the Wisconsin Council of Churches model for returning to church, that they consulted public health experts and church leaders and guidance from around the country. Also say that we expect this plan to evolve because we can't predict the future and know everything that's going to come. So using this plan is going to take a lot of discernment and wisdom. Also say that, like I said, these case count numbers and the data on testing is going to be key. It's not about dates. And the basic idea is that weeks of declining case counts and increasing testing, the two of those put together with over time, that's how we're going to determine whether we move from phase to phase. We might not move straight through phases because there is a risk. There's always a danger of second or third waves, and so that might reset the clock and put us back. And of course, you'll see when we get to the phases themselves that kind of lays out in each phase what we're doing, what the precautions are going to be. The reality is, no matter how many precautions we take, there's no way of reducing the risk down to zero. And even if for you, the risk would be worth it. You know, the risk, you judge the risk to yourself to be low. You yourself pose a risk. I myself pose a risk to the people around me. So that's things the background to kind of keep in mind as we walk through this. So here we go. Let me get rid of this web address, stpaulclinton.org/return. That's where you can view the official return plan. And now I just want to take some time to walk through it a little bit and hopefully anticipate some questions. So the first thing you may notice there is the big takeaway. As of yesterday and today, we're in the safe at home phase, and so overall, that means new cases. They've been about the same for the last week. There's always going to be variation, but it's been about the same this the whole past week, and that though thankfully is a decrease from the week before that, and even though testing had been increasing since May 12th, that has decreased. So that just gives you, that's always going to be there, and that will update most frequently. So keep your eyes on that little purple calendar, and that, because that'll really tell you week to week, day to day, where we're at in terms of phases. So, and before I go any farther, let me stop and show you what I'm talking about. We have this linked in the kind of the prelude to the plan, or the background of the plan. So this is Iowa's coronavirus kind of hub. This is where all of their cases are described, and you can see the overall numbers I've just scrolled through. This, we're not using this individual's positive percentage, but that's something to keep an eye on. I mean, that'll tell you a lot. Public health experts say a good number is below 10%. So what that number means is it's the percentage of people who test positive out of all the tests. And so below 10% is good. That says that the testing has opened up to the general populace and isn't just targeting people who are showing symptoms. So, for example, here's the first chart that will be important, because we're looking at, that's one of the metrics in moving from phase to phase, is how many people are being tested a day. For Iowa, the state of Iowa, public health experts say that 10,000 tests per day is the benchmark for safety and reasonable risk in really opening up and coming back and everything. So that's the number later on that we're using to move between, I think it's move into phase 2. But we'll double check that when we get to it. But you can see here's this chart that's at the top of the page. You can see it kind of flickering with numbers as I move across. That tells you exactly how many people were tested on each day. So let's see, this is on May 12th. That's that peak of 4,476 tests. And as you can see, the trend line since then is more or less going down. I don't know why there was such a big drop today. That's the number for the 19th. I don't understand that, but high numbers of tests are part of what's important for these metrics. So, Gene on council brought up, how it's hard to get tests, that they're only testing people who are showing symptoms or have been in contact with people who are showing symptoms. And that's a problem because, so for example, if everybody at St. Paul was tested we would know, and we could come back this Sunday in person in the sanctuary without social distancing. If we know who had tested positive, those people would stay home and everybody else would go to church, and we wouldn't have to continue social distancing. But we don't know, and then the increasing numbers of tests per day make it possible so that more people than just those who are either essential workers or showing symptoms or been in contact with people who have had symptoms. More people, like me, who have just been healthy and want to know, more people like me or you can get tests. That's what those numbers climbing to 10,000 mean. Okay. And of course, the next second important number, maybe even the first most important number, is the just individuals positive per day. And you can see that thankfully we've been generally declining since what day is that? Since the end of April. That's April 29th. That tallest bar there is at 783. Yeah. And today we were at 102. Now, granted, we also were really low on testing today. But, that general trend line is really helpful. It's really helpful to see. And just really that's a gift to know that we're moving in the right direction in terms of numbers of cases. But it's not numbers of cases alone. It's testing plus numbers of cases, because you can have a low day, a low number in terms of new cases, but we also had a really low day in terms of numbers of tests. So that's a problem, where that doesn't show as much progress. Now, council, one of the gifts of having a plan like this is that we don't have to wait till a council meeting to decide where we're at in this return plan. We can just look at the numbers. And council asked me to be the one to look at the numbers and make a determination about where we're at. So let me show you something else which I look at, and this is I look at the New York Times's, and this is probably available in other places. But what I like, this is the New York Times chart for new cases reported by day in Iowa. So it's the same exact information. They get their information from the Iowa website too. It's a day behind. As you can see, the 19th isn't on here. But they add this red line here. That red line is the 7-day average. And that's super duper helpful, because I don't know if you can notice some of these biggest dips here are the weekends. There's some variation throughout the week. None of these numbers are going to be a straight line. So that bright red line there gives a really helpful trend line averaging on that day the past 7 days. That day and the past 7 days. So even this trend line of that red line kind of evens out some of the peaks and valleys, and just shows you that we're on a downward trajectory in Iowa in terms of number of cases per day. So that's good. That's good news. And you can see the same thing is true in reported deaths by day. So I'm just showing you this so you can see for yourself where these numbers are coming from and what's going into these decisions about where we're at and in terms of the plan. So that's a little background. Hope I didn't, I can be kind of a numbers guy and lose people that way, but I hope that was at a high enough level that sort of made sense. So here we are back to our plan, and I just want to show you what each of these phases are all about. So there's 3 phases really, or 4 sort of. So safer at home is where we're at right now. And you can see those bullet points. What does safer at home mean? Safer at home means online worship only online meetings only. Our service ministries are kind of addressing only essential needs, doing as much as they can to stay safe, and minimal staffing just to do the basics for essential operations. That's where we're at right now. Now, how will we know when we move from safer at home to phase one? Well, it's after 2 weeks of declining case counts in Iowa. And, based on that metric alone, we're pretty much there. But it's also the number of daily tests in Iowa to be above 7,000. So we're far short of that. When I was drafting this a week and a half ago, a week ago today, the 12th, that was when our testing looked like we were getting closer, and we what I understand is that Iowa has taken steps to radically increase its capacity to do testing. There's a new testing site I've heard in Clinton. I know there's one of those tents in the parking lot at the mall here in Davenport. And so what Iowa is right now doing is validating its new testing system. So basically testing its tests to make sure they work correctly and return useful results. So I'm hoping that soon those will ramp up. So as you can see, moving into phase one takes both of those things: declining case counts for 2 weeks and increasing daily test numbers until it's above 7,000. But what I want you to see is still at this point, we're worshiping online only, even in phase one. There's a number of other things that become a little looser, but council might, we're tentatively considering for our next council meeting that we might meet in person. That's a group of less than 10 people. And if we do that, we're not going to have the meal that we usually have before our council meetings. We're going to meet in the parking lot, hoping it's a nice warm night with no rain. So that's the safest thing we can do, is meet outside and keep the numbers small and to limit the amount of time that we're together. So as you can see, phase one still it isn't a big change. That's kind of a bummer in itself, but that's the way it is, in terms of just being safe. So phase two, we will enter phase two after several weeks of declining case counts in Iowa. So let's just imagine, and this is very hypothetical because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but let's imagine for another 4 weeks or for another 6 weeks after today, that trend line that we were just looking at just keeps dropping, keeps going closer and closer to zero. That will be one of the two indicators. And let's say the number of tests that that Iowa is able to do every day is increasing and increasing, is at or above that 10,000 mark. Then we will know. Then that's when we will enter phase two, and phase two will be the first phase at which we might begin to worship inside, in person. So you'll notice that in the list of things that change for phase two. There's still there's a possibility, and it's kind of like like I say in the introduction to this, that using this plan will require discernment. It's not just set in stone. But we'll have a decision to make whether we'll still be worshiping online or if we will worship in person. And here's one of the big reasons why. I mean, I just want to read to you what worship will be like in phase two. So we'll be live streaming that in person worship. So people who don't come can participate. But that will be worship with fewer than 50 people, all of us practicing social distancing and wearing masks. We will not sing or have communion. There'll be no coffee or fellowship time. We'll find a way to do sharing the peace and collecting offering without touch. And we will do a little speaking in unison. Oh man, I need something to drink. Yeah, and maybe we will do more than one service in a week to accommodate everybody. But the big question for me there, something to start thinking about now is that the kind of worship that feels like worship if we take out singing and communion and fellowship time? Maybe it is for you, and that'll be good to hear from you over the coming weeks. That doesn't feel a lot like worship to me, but I'm open to it. If that's I serve. I am here to serve, and so if that it will serve you, then we can do it that way once we come into phase two. Also in phase two, that's when we may begin to offer options for in-person education, Bible studies, Sunday school, small group meetings, and when our regular office functions may resume with precautions. But even at this phase two, see that last bullet point: high risk individuals, people over 60 and with underlying conditions, should continue to shelter in place. So just keep that in mind. All right, so phase three. The benchmarks for phase three, after a few months of declining case counts in Iowa, and the number of daily tests in Iowa is well over 10,000. So just think about that. A few months. That's when, right across the top, high-risk individuals still should shelter in place. And we're still wearing masks, as is recommended in public places. But otherwise, a lot of things are starting to come back to normal by this point. I wouldn't say it's all the way back to normal, but our in-person worship, those physical distancing requirements will ease. We won't have to be spread out. We could have more than 50. We try to avoid clumps and crowding, but otherwise, kind of back to normal. Or closer to normal, I should say. Excuse me. We still might have multiple worship options if people still want to spread out. We'll still do a way to share peace and collect offering without touch, and consider. That's an important word there. Consider resuming communion. In terms of singing, singing is one of the most dangerous things you could do in a group right now. The American Association of Choral Directors is essentially recommending suspending choirs for the next 18 to 24 months because of the risk. And we focus a lot on cleaning and high touch areas, but really it's the touch places is less of a danger than just the sharing airspace. And when we're singing, we're just spewing out droplets and these things called aerosols that I never knew anything about until now. So we will just keep watching whether even in phase 3 if we will be singing again. We may have soloists. We might have 2 or 3 or 4 people spread out singing, but not as a congregation. And we might, still in phase 3, consider waiting before resuming coffee or our fellowship time, and really encouraging everybody to come and go quickly without a lot of mingling before and after. And I just want to remind you that this is after a few months of declining case counts. So if things keep going in the trajectory they are now, this phase 3 would not be until, it's May, June, July, August, maybe September. So that might be a tough pill to swallow. But that is the plan that St. Paul's leaders have adopted. Here at the bottom of the plan, I want you to see other resources you can consider. There's the Wisconsin Council of Churches advice, their model that was a model for ours, the ELCA's considerations, which was a lot like that Wisconsin Council of Churches model, and the CDC stuff. These numbers of that 10,000 numbers of tests per day, that benchmark that was reported on it on the NPR website, and they have a great interactive chart for state-by-state numbers. And the 2 things at the end I almost recommend to you even more than the other resources on that list. A really eye-opening video is a video of a meeting with epidemiologist Michael Osterholm, who apparently is an Iowa native, but he is based in the Minneapolis area. He is a good Lutheran, and he had a conversation hosted by the Minneapolis Area Synod, in which he really just laid it out pretty straight and what we're up against. So that was a sobering video, and so I recommend that to you. That's probably about 40 minutes long of his conversation, a little background that he offers, where we're likely to head, and then some question and answer with pastors and other church leaders. And then finally, this article, Caught Between Anxiety and Anger, I just really, really appreciate. I just want to show it to you real quick because it was so useful. The anxiety and the anger that they talk about is on both sides. There's so much polarization. It's even tracking Democrat versus Republican in terms of how we perceive and plan to move forward in terms of the pandemic. But there's anxiety, whether you think it's too soon to restart worship, and underneath that anxiety, anger at those who don't appreciate the science or respect the concerns. But then there's anger on the other side, colleagues and members who think that worship is going to be dangerous for a long time, and all we can do is accept the danger and do the best we can to manage the risks. And under that is anxiety about appearing weak or vulnerable in the face of the threat. So just let's be honest about there's anger and anxiety on both sides of that polarization. That there's it's a both and there, even though the reasons may be different. And what I really appreciate about this article is that the author goes on to say that when you step back, both sides. Here's what she says. When I manage to step back, however, what surprises me is that we are all acting as though corporate worship in a sanctuary, scripted by a few for the benefit of the rest, were the singular, the only ritual denoting a life of true faith. I just really appreciate how she helps us get beyond this either or. You know, my I had a teacher, a mentor, who said, you know, one option, there's no freedom in just having one option. We all know that. Having two options, well, gosh, that's a dilemma, and that's not freedom either. It's only when you get to three options, or four, or five, or 20 options, that really freedom emerges. And so that's my encouragement, is that we just start to think creatively. You know what the bishop was suggesting. I was on a Zoom call with the bishop and a number of dozen or so pastors, Lutheran pastors from Clinton and Jackson County, and he said, you know, we're really focused on the when we're coming back and how, you know, what it's going to look like when we come back. But there's a question even before that. That's the why question, which is why gather in the first place. And you know, he says his experience is when he really pushes people on that why, that they're really kind of left with not much other than they want to or they feel like it. And so he invites us to get really clear on why, and the purpose of that, getting really clear on the why, is then we can get creative about how to achieve that purpose. You know, so the author of this article goes on to recommend, you know, some advice, or a line from Joan Chittister is, she says it's not so much what is done that matters as that something is done, something to raise the ordinary parts of life to signs of life's extraordinary blessings and graces. And you know, that there's something really beautiful about it. Isn't that a reason why we gather, to raise the ordinary parts of life to signs of life's extraordinary blessings and graces? You know, those signs, those ordinary parts of life, like eating, like bathing, like singing, like being together, to really recognize those as signs of blessing. And when I focus on that, and why we do what we do in worship, why we gather in the first place, well, that starts to loosen everything for me, and think about how can we have kept doing that, haven't we? Even though we're apart. So yeah, I recommend this whole article to you, and I just invite you to leave your comments below here, and feel free to be in touch with me and other St. Paul leaders as we make our way through this time of uncertainty, anxiety, anger, isolation. You know, again, the top line takeaway is we will not be worshiping in person in May, and likely deep into June at the earliest. It will be several weeks at least until we are in person worshiping again. But now we have a plan that takes away some of the burden of making decisions and gives us some guidance as we go forward. And you can know, maybe not what day on the calendar to plan to come back to church, but at least what the process and the decision making is going to be like, what the sources of the decision making is going to be like. You know, I'm just holding on to that grief and noting that grief at the loss, and also really glad for this plan. I really believe in it. I believe it's the best plan that we could have. And that as we keep working with it and it evolves and we apply our prayerful discernment to it, that we will make decisions that are do the best to minimize the risk and maximize when we'll able to come back safely. So I hope that you and your loved ones continue to be safe. I just talked to a St. Paul person today who had a family member who died of coronavirus in Florida. So I hope St. Paul people continue to be safe and healthy, and that your family, near and far, is continuing to be safe and healthy. And we're going to hang together, just to keep hanging in there. All the blessings to you. Peace.